You are 3 weeks out from the start of the semester and you're arguably planning for the most important class, also known as the first day. With the University of North Carolina at Greensboro pushing for the celebration of diversity and strategies to implement inclusive pedagogy, are you looking for methods to implement inclusivity in your classroom? Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to our podcast brought to you by the University Teaching and Learning Commons at UNCG. Today's episode will be divided into 6 segments, from perfecting your syllabus to giving you unique icebreakers that will make all students feel comfortable in their skin. This podcast will serve to help you set an inclusive tone that will last throughout the duration of your upcoming semesters and for the semesters to come. So buckle up, avoid those microaggressions, and let's get started. Before we jump in, I would like to introduce you to the team, including the perspectives of an undergraduate student, a graduate student who's also a dedicated student athlete, and a teaching assistant who also serves as a graduate student. We hope to offer you a unique perspective on this topic and offer you some really great resources.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Johnson, and I'm an undergrad student here at UNCG studying communications.
Hello, I'm Jazz Palmer, a graduate student in the communications department at UNCG and a member of the softball team.
And hi, I'm Hannah Walburn-Lewis. I'm a first-year teaching assistant and graduate student at UNCG. So, you may be asking, what is inclusive pedagogy and why should I care about incorporating it into my classroom? Do you remember the classes where everyone got along and your instructor always made you feel like your voice was being heard? Take the next 30 seconds to remember those classes and reminisce on those golden years. As you have reflected, I hope you see how valuable it is to feel included. Inclusive pedagogy has the opportunity to empower students and bring in their unique perspectives to various subject matters in your classes. Avoiding diversity in your classroom is a missed chance and can actually create tension, even if it is done unintentionally. And Center for New Designs and Learning Scholarship at Georgetown University put out a pamphlet that broke down inclusive pedagogy into several different sections. These components are meant to describe the complexity of inclusion efforts and include content, power, climate, assessment, and pedagogy. The pamphlet, which is called Inclusive Pedagogy, Resources and Ideas for Teaching, showcases inclusive pedagogy to be a student-centered approach to teaching that pays attention to the varied background, learning styles, and abilities of all learners in front of you. It is a method of teaching in which instructors and students work together to create a supportive and open environment that fosters social justice and allows each individual to be fully present and feel equally valued. You may be asking, why is this concept so important on a collegiate level, and why is it especially relevant at UNCG? It is important to understand that incoming students are coming to a completely new territory and are just expected to adapt. These students are going to be surrounded by people that are different to them and may encounter ideas and cultures they've never been introduced to. We all have self-serving biases, and we have to be aware of how that could be portrayed in the classroom. Instructors are put in a position where students look to them for guidance and watch how we respond in different situations, especially situations that can be uncomfortable and challenging. Knowing how to respond in a situation where, say, two students completely disagree on an issue and are verbalizing their disagreements, or even understand how to help an international student who's not only entering college for the first time, but maybe entering the country for the first time. A good example of recognizing the power and influence an instructor can have in the classroom is an article in 2010 called Crossing the Line, Framing Appropriate Responses in the Diversity Classroom by Delaney Kirk and Rita Durant. This article provides a specific example of how an instructor was deciding the proper way to respond to a student whose own prejudice were exhibited in a discussion post in an online class, and looks at the steps that the instructor took to respond in accordance with the overall objectives. The article encourages one to act creatively creatively instead of reactively because the instructor is setting an example for the other students in the course. The instructor references invitational rhetoric to emphasize the importance of not trying to change students' views to agree with them, but to at least allow them to be exposed to new ideas and new perspectives. This article is great for understanding how to formulate responses to students who respond in negative ways that the majority may not agree with. Overall, the importance of inclusive pedagogy is to make every student feel like they belong. It has meant that students do not feel singled out. Looking at UNCG's demographics from 2018, we have American and Indian or Alaskan Native less than 0.4%, Asian 4.8%, Black or African American 27.2%, Hispanics 9.3%, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander less than 0.2%, non-resident aliens 3.2%, and two or more races 4.5%, and white is the majority with 48.8%. As you can notice, UNCG brings students of all different cultures, ethnicities, and social backgrounds from age, ability, ethnicity, sexual preference, religion, sociocultural status, culture, and gender. Diversity comes in several different forms. We hope that you recognize that inclusive pedagogy is multifaceted and is difficult not only to understand, but to implement. As we move to the second segment of the podcast, which will showcase the first day of classes, we will set the expectation for your student for all classes to follow. Now that we have defined inclusive pedagogy, you may be wondering why or how it could be included in the first class session. Let's dive into the importance of the first day. Before even the first day of class, you will have some students that take the initiative and review the syllabus. So pay attention to the material in the syllabus because that could be the first impression that students have on your class. My colleague Jazz will inform you more on how you can revise your syllabus to showcase inclusivity in just a few minutes. But for the majority of students in the class, they will have not read the syllabus and may not have any knowledge prior on what to expect coming in. We look at an article called First Day, which was written in 1999 but still remains beyond relevant, by Pamela Cooper and Gustav Frederick. Just treating the class as a 30-minute quick greeting is a missed chance because, as Frederick and Cooper mentioned, it's the first way for you to demonstrate your commitment to the course, to the students, and to your specific discipline. They mentioned that students are expecting secondary socialization and starting to understand their new roles within the classroom. Therefore, we can recognize the significant impact that inclusive pedagogy can have for the first encounter you have with your students. In the First Day article, they also highlight the key elements that students want to know. That being what material the course will cover, the rules in and out of the classroom, and your personality. How could you include inclusivity in these elements? Of course, your course coverage will be dependent on your subject matter, but we still encourage you to look at topics and issues that are relevant to diverse subject matters. Course rules, especially in the class that partake in discussions frequently, is the chance to show students how to conduct themselves. Even in an online class, you can set the ground rules for how students can and should respond to each other. This may be their first encounter with a class in an online setting, so don't be afraid to give them examples to model or continue to give them pointers. For example, many students do not know how to give constructive criticism. Set parameters, but let them give it their best effort and learn from their ways. Giving disclaimers about potential topics or areas that surround diversity is also encouraged. Don't be afraid to acknowledge the diversity in your classroom, but encourage your students to use it to their advantage so they can grow. Lastly, we look at teacher personality, which is a completely subjective matter. But remember, students are always looking at how you respond in the classroom to determine how they should or should not modify their behaviors. If you come across rigid and stiff, your students' actions could mirror that for the rest of the semester. If we are asking them to bring in their knowledge and perspectives, we need to set an encouraging environment where they feel safe. Other variables that could be established for the first day include getting your students into a routine. The sooner you get them acquainted to what a normal day feels like, the more at ease they will adjust to the setting. As we move to the next segment, I leave you with a piece from the First Day article. A student makes a decision about a class and the instructor after only 15 minutes. Make every second and every minute count.
A timeline of the class, and clear guidelines on what is expected in the class, including behavior. Because the syllabus does all of these things, it is imperative for it to be clear and concise. In Sfineke and McKeechie's book, McKeechie's Teaching Tips, Strategies, Research, and Theory for College and University Teachers, they relate the syllabus to a contract, where each person involved, the student and teacher, has a clear understanding of responsibilities. The syllabus is a great place to implement inclusive pedagogy and show that the classroom you have is a classroom where everyone is valued and able. One of the most effective ways to set the tone and begin to create a culture for your class is including an inclusivity and diversity statement in your syllabus. Because the syllabus only includes essential information, including this statement will show students that you value and respect difference and are aware of current campus and nationwide conversations surrounding diversity. Brown University has some great examples of diversity and inclusion statements that their professors include in syllabi. A great example comes from Lynn Hernandez, who studies behavioral and social sciences at the School of Public Health at Brown. Her respect for diversity statement goes as follows. It is my intent that students from all diverse backgrounds and perspectives be well served by this course, that students' learning needs to be addressed both in and out of class, and that the diversity that the students bring to this class be viewed as a resource, strength, and benefit. It is my intent to present materials and activities that are respectful of diversity, gender identity, sexuality, disability, age, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, race, nationality, religion, and culture. Your suggestions are encouraged and appreciated. Please let me know ways to improve the effectiveness of this course for you personally or for other students or student groups. Important note, given the sensitive and challenging nature of the material discussed in class, it is imperative that there be an atmosphere of trust and safety in the classroom. I will attempt to foster an environment in which each class member is able to hear and respect each other. It is critical that each class member shows respect for all worldviews expressed in class. It is expected that some of the material in this course may evoke strong emotions. Please be respectful of others' emotions and be mindful of your own. Please let me know if something said or done in the classroom by either myself or other students is particularly troubling or causes discomfort or offense. While our intentions may not be to cause discomfort or offense, the impact of what happens throughout the course is not to be ignored and is something that I consider to be very important and deserving of attention. If and when this occurs, there are several ways to alleviate some of the discomfort or hurt you may experience. 1. Discuss the situation privately with me. I am always open to listening to students' experiences and want to work with students to find acceptable ways to process and address the issue. 2. Discuss the situation within the class. Chances are there are at least one other student in the class who has had a similar response to the material. Discussion enhances the ability for all class participants to have a fuller understanding of context and impact of course material and class discussions. 3. Notify me of the issue through another source, such as your academic advisor, a trusted faculty member, or a peer. If for any reason you do not feel comfortable discussing the issue directly with me, I encourage you to seek out another, more comfortable avenue to address this issue. So, this is a very extensive statement, but one that sets the tone for the class without question. The great thing about diversity and inclusion statements is that they are relevant in any class, from biology or calculus to communication studies. It is essential to create an environment of inclusivity and culture where all students can learn. These are just a few ways that you can include inclusivity and diversity into your syllabus. The next topic that I will talk about is one of my favorites, icebreakers. I know many students don't necessarily like icebreakers because they don't like attention on them or having to do an activity on the first day. But icebreakers are a great way to showcase inclusive pedagogy in the classroom. They are also a great way to set the tone and begin to establish a culture in the classroom. Icebreakers even achieve a lot of different things without students knowing it. In Daniel's book, 8 Essential Questions Teachers Ask, a guidebook for communicating with students, she outlines a few ideas for icebreakers. One icebreaker that is specifically committed to multicultural awareness and inclusion and diversity are name stories. In this icebreaker, you ask students to write down their name story, how they got their name, where does it come from, the cultural origins, nicknames, why they might have those, or why they prefer to be called a certain name, etc. Then we break them into small groups and have them share their name story. After that, we bring the class back together and have a discussion about what they learned, why it may have surprised them, and how that information may affect the classroom culture moving forward. Name stories are a great way for students to get to know each other on a deeper level and learn about where people are from and maybe some of the why to a person. It is an activity that is simple but has a lot of value and creates value in the class. I hope you have enjoyed these ideas about incorporating inclusive pedagogy into the syllabus and icebreakers in class. Have a great one and go Spartans!
In the third segment, I will talk about the do's and the don'ts when it comes to incorporating diversity and inclusion in your classroom, as well as what a community is in your classroom and why it's important. When it comes to a diverse classroom and setting the tempo for an inclusive culture, there are many steps that you should and shouldn't take. Let's explore further into some do's and don'ts when it comes to a diverse classroom and incorporating inclusive pedagogy. First and foremost, the class can only be as diverse as the facilitator allows it to be. Recognize any biases or stereotypes that you may have. You should always try to go into your first day with no assumptions and an open mind. This will immediately level the playing field for all students. If you go into your first day without any predetermined notions, that will show your students that you have the same confidence level in everyone. Another way to be aware of diversity in your classroom is to look at the material that you're teaching. Whenever you're selecting course material, try to utilize text and readings whose language is gender neutral and free of stereotypes. Think about the text that explores more topics about multiculturalism. Consider texts that explore different options or view history in a non-traditional light. When selecting text and looking at books, it is important to stay open-minded. Do not assume that all students will recognize cultural, literary, or historical references familiar to you. Try and incorporate time in class for your students to tell you what they know about your course and what affiliations they have with the course. This will allow you what your students already know, as well as give you an understanding of what they recognize and make references or connections with. Another important subject to remember on your first day is how to avoid assumptions. You have the first day twice a year. This means you have a new group of students twice a year. On the first day, you must establish that safe sense of community. Give your students that icebreaker that Jazz previously talked about to get them engaging and talking with one another and yourself. By watching other students engage with one another, you can pick up on students' preferences in that capacity. They don't have to open up to you directly. By listening to them open up to their peers, you may pick up on something that may help you relate with them later on. Once students see that your classroom is a safe space for them to express themselves while they're learning, you will learn what they prefer. The second topic that I'm going to discuss with you is classroom community and what it means to have a community within your classroom. A strong classroom community is one where students feel empowered and valued. Students experience pure relationships and the ability to create their community of learning. I'm going to talk to you about the 6 qualities of a classroom that makes a community. These 6 qualities include connection, participation, safety, support, belonging, and empowerment. When you have a connected classroom, it helps students convey information and learn from one another. When students speak up in class, they can elaborate in a way that others understand as well. This gives your students multiple perspectives to learn from. If your students feel safe around one another, they are more apt to open up and dig deeper into ideas, as well as share more about their personal experiences with one another. Having a safe community in your classroom will also allow students to be openly expressive and encouraging to others. In a supportive learning environment, students should feel valued and included. A supportive community values relationships and helps one another. Making students feel like they belong will help them make connections with one another, as well as make everyone feel equal. This includes caring for one another and being respectful of everyone's beliefs. If you incorporate all of the first 5 elements in your classroom community, your students will feel empowered to be the best that they can in your classroom. There are many beliefs that your students will encounter in the classroom community. Increasing students' trust to take an academic risk and letting your students take ownership of their learning environment are just 2 of the many reasons a classroom community is essential to yourself and to your students' learning.
Hope that we have provided you some useful tools to help you implement effective inclusive strategies in the classroom. We understand that just trying to create content and help your students learn the basics can be hard on its own, but fostering an environment that allows everyone to feel included will allow room for groups and can boost the overall morale in your classes. If you are interested in the material that was referenced today, we want to close with these helpful sources.
Here are some additional resources that we found helpful and we feel that could provide you with more information. By Deanna Daniels, we have 8 essential questions teachers ask, a guidebook for communicating with students. We also have a fantastic article called Crossing the Line, Framing Appropriate Responses in the Diversity Classroom by Delaney Kirk and Rita Durant. From Brown University, we have the Harriet W. Sheridan Center for Teaching and Learning. We also have the Center for New Designs in Learning and Scholarship at Georgetown University. We have McKeechee's Teaching Tips by McKeechee and Savinicki. And then we also have The First Day by Pamela Cooper and Gustav Frederick. Thank you again for listening, and we hope that these sources and strategies will help you on the first day of classes, making every second and every minute count.